a G6PD deficient person, and I got to know about it at the latter part of my life. If I knew my status, I wouldn't have gone through a lot of things that I went through from childhood to now, and even how my parents suffered, running from one hospital to the other. My mom especially, going to prayer camps to fast for 7 days without food and water. All in the name that I have certain strange sickness that doctors cannot diagnose. I'm sure then it wasn't easy. Even now, it is not known how much 30 plus years ago. Mama recounts with joy how she went to the prayer camp because they've done all the tests they could. I was okay, but frequently I become anemic and they need to, get a blood transfusion for me infrequent. Little did she know that the food that she was feeding me, that the triggers, and hence my anemia and weakness. We all know that soya, beans, and other cereals are highly nutritious. So even right from the hospital, you'll be advised to be fed. If you're a mother, a newborn mother, they will tell you that feed your child with these things because it makes them healthy and stronger. But G6PD deficient patients are to avoid this food because that is their triggers. And the most dangerous aspect of this is that after my mother has fed me with this food and I get these triggers, I go to hospital and they give me sulfur medicines in addition. So you can imagine. Because G6PD deficient patients are not supposed to take what? Sulfur medicines. But because it wasn't known and the awareness wasn't that great, even some medical personnel have no idea about the condition. I have watched people suffer from G6PD. And at a point, what even broke my heart was to see a mother wailing because she has lost her child due to G6PD. It was this heaviness on my heart that I felt that being a communicator and a development communicator as such, I should use this opportunity to advocate for people to go test, know their status. And I'll even encourage that when as parents or as mothers, when we give birth, G6PD test should be one of our priority. This morning we have gathered here to learn more about G6PD. We have our resource persons who will be here to expatiate on the topic. And I believe that by the time we are done, we acquire more knowledge. This is our purpose of gathering this morning. Thank you.
Now, we'd like to move on to the introduction of our chairperson, which is going to be done by a lady in the person of Miss Glenda Kumiwood. Miss Glenda, please let's clap for her.
Good morning, our distinguished guests, fellow students, and ladies and gentlemen. I am Glenda Kumiwood, and it's an honor for me to stand here today introducing to you our chairperson, Sikayena Amanka. Personally, I'm very, very happy. And I was very, very excited when Madam shared this experience with me. And it set me thinking, in terms of, does it mean that, these conditions, and then she made me also understand that many people have this condition. And one of the things that I was very happy about is the fact that she has managed together with the team to bring on board the medical director at the UPSA clinic and other significant stakeholders for this meeting. Madam, I believe that beyond this initial meeting, every year there would be a meeting of development communicators. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Good. Now then, hopefully then you will all be alumni. And we would expect you to come back to campus and give the program your support. Would you do that? Yes. Good. And yes, so by this meeting, which is the inception, we would incorporate it, we would integrate it into our programs as a department so that every year under the leadership of Madam in the department. We'll bring on board 1 or 2 other lecturers, okay, who share the vision together with students every year so that they can come up. I believe this year is G6PD. Next year it will be another thing altogether, and already I'm looking forward to it. Okay, and so I thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, so I'm assuming this is everybody's favorite part. So next we are going to be taking a musical interlude and a poetry performance from our folklore team. Please let's give them a round of applause.
I am usually a hard worker, arriving early to work, making submissions on time. You see my muscle, I work out 8 days a week, but all of a sudden, I feel very tired. My skin looks pale, my urine has changed color. I think my wife is doing this to me, maybe because I spoke about a female co-worker the last time. She's changing my diet. I'm used to the early morning banku with okra soup with some crabs on the side, or Auntie Mary's wache with plenty garri and shito. All of a sudden, my food portion has been downsized. My wife is giving me rice and some fava beans on the side. Fava beans? What's in concern with fava beans? Isn't favor granted by the Lord? Headache, back pain, stress, fatigue, jaundice. These are the symptoms of G6PD.
How did I find out? The doctor said so. I wanted to switch things up a little by adding rice and fava beans to our platter, aspirin in place of paracetamol to make us feel better. Little did I know that I was turning things upside down, because after some few days, he started complaining, saying,
His head ache and back the pain, stress levels are high and doesn't feel very fine.
What could have been the reason? I rushed him over to the doctors and he got tested. It turns out he has G6PD, a condition causing his red blood cells to break down in response to certain foods, medication and other stresses. G6PD. Because 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. It's a genetic abnormality that results in an inadequate amount of glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase in the blood. And this condition is very common amongst men. It can be triggered by aspirin, fava beans, and other drugs. It is lifelong or can last a few years. It cannot be cured, but it can be managed. Treatment can help. It requires a medical diagnosis. Get tested. You'll be fine.
It's time. Tell someone it's time.
It's time.
We have a very honorable man in our midst, and to introduce him, we would want to call on Miss Jennifer Enyonam Kuto to come and do the introduction of the resource person. Miss Jennifer, keep clapping.
So I'm honored to present to you or to introduce you the resource speaker in the person of Dr. Kujo Senaja, who comes to us from UPSA Clinic, and he's a medical doctor. I'd like for us to introduce to everyone Mr. Senaja. Please, can we all clap our hands as we introduce him?
It's an honor to be here with you today, to be a resource person, and to talk about a very common and yet very little known disease. That's G6PD deficiency. I find it interesting that you chose this particular disease to talk about, and I think whoever was involved in it, I want to commend you. I think it's a good thing to create awareness on, because it's an important disease. So G6PD stands for glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. It's the name of an enzyme that almost all of us here have in our system, okay? There are several enzymes in the body that perform several roles. And G6PD is just one of those enzymes that is in the body that helps in the normal functioning of red blood cells in the body. And you will know that our blood is made up of red blood cells, white blood cells, a lot of fluid and serum and other things. But the key thing in our blood is our red blood cells. And these red blood cells, like every cell in the body, undergoes what we call metabolism. To function well, it has to produce energy. It has to release waste, it has to perform its roles. And in the process of doing that, it produces certain waste byproducts which have to be cleared from the system. When the waste is too much, it becomes too toxic for the red blood cells and they break down. So this enzyme, G6PD, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, performs an important role of neutralizing the toxic substances so the red blood cells can survive longer and perform their function well. So some people unfortunately have a situation where genetically there is a change, what we call a mutation, in the gene system for the production of G6PD, the enzyme. So what happens is because of that change in the genetic material or code that produces the enzyme is either not produced or is produced in very little quantities, or the structure is so altered that it's not able to perform its function well. Just like in diabetes, some people don't have insulin or they have too little insulin, or the molecule and its receptors don't agree so that their sugar goes up. Insulin is supposed to bring blood sugar down. In the same way, G6PD removes these toxins from the body and allows the red blood cell to function well and survive. So when you do not have enough of the G6PD, we say you have a deficiency. It can be total or it can be partial. But once there's a deficiency of that enzyme, then what that means is that it's not able to get the toxins out of the red blood cells. The red blood cells break down easily, and you end up having anemia. Anemia means that your red blood cells are lower than they should be. So if there's something that makes them break down quickly, the numbers go down, then you have anemia. And because this kind of anemia is from the breakdown of red blood cells, we call it hemolytic anemia. Hemolysis simply means breaking down of red blood cells. So anemia from the breaking down of red blood cells because of a deficiency of this enzyme is called hemolytic anemia secondary to G6PD deficiency. So that's the main problem with G6PD deficiency. Apart from if the red blood cells were not breaking down with its deficiency, and so leading to anemia, it wouldn't be a problem at all. But it is a problem because there are several things that can trigger a breakdown of the red blood cells. Several things. The normal scheme of life, most people with the deficiency are still normal. The red cells are able to manage because the toxins come, but they're able to manage them. But when other factors come in that lead to an increase of the toxins in the red blood cells, then the deficiency begins to show. Because if you had enough of it, it will still be able to remove all the toxins. But those who don't have enough or don't have any at all, then they get into trouble. What are some of these factors that can lead to increased breakdown of red blood cells? Usually, it's anything that stresses the cells. And infections are a common one. So any infection at all, you just get malaria, or you get a cold, you get a urinary tract infection. Any infection in the bloodstream can increase the stress on the red blood cells, produce more waste. G6PD is not there to help clear it quickly, so the cells break down and you have your hemolytic anemia. Depending on the severity of the infection, hemolysis may be severe or mild. Usually it is mild, but sometimes it can be fatal. If it's really, really bad, you can get so bad anemia that it can actually lead to death. So infections are a common cause. Apart from infections, certain medications as well. There are some medicines that lead to increased production of this waste and lead to increased hemolysis for those who have deficiencies. The commonest ones that you should all know about, fortunately the most common one we don't use very much anymore, that's chloroquine and its family of drugs. So chloroquine, primaquine, even quinine itself, and all those ones, they are very common causes of hemolysis in people who have G6PD deficiency. You need to be aware of that. But apart from that, there are certain antibiotics as well. That can cause it. A common one will be something like ciprofloxacin. We prescribe it a lot for urinary tract infections and for typhoid. But if someone has G6PD deficiency, they can have trouble with drugs like ciprofloxacin. It can lead to breakdown of their red blood cells. They will get anemia and all that. Apart from cipro, there are other ones like Septrin, and generally drugs that contain sulfur. All of them can be problematic. Apart from that, there are common household things, not necessarily medicines, that people use, like camphor balls, naphthalene. Naphthalene, for example, can trigger hemolysis in some people. So you need to be careful about that as well. Those who put camphor into their clothes, into their rooms, some even into their pots and things like that to keep cockroaches away or to take away bad odor. It's useful, but if you have G6PD deficiency, it can lead to hemolysis. So you need to be aware of that. In terms of food, it's commonly said that fava beans, I don't think it's common here. It's more Mediterranean kind of meals, also can trigger it. So it's good to know that. What happens when there is hemolysis? How would you know? The first sign usually will be what we call jaundice. So your eyes begin to look yellow. The whites of your eyes are not that clear anymore. They begin to look a bit yellowish. If it's really bad, it can begin to look greenish. Then we know that there's a lot of hemolysis. A lot of hemoglobin is breaking down, releasing substances in the bloodstream that then show on your eyes and sometimes on your skin. Your urine too will get dark. The same substance, bilirubin, so much of it from the breakdown of the red blood cells will make your urine begin to look like tea without milk, even as deep as coffee or Coca-Cola sometimes. And so these are all signs that there's hemolysis going on. Take note, it's not only G6PD deficiency that can give you hemolysis. Even someone who doesn't have a deficiency, who has a serious infection, may sometimes have cells breaking down. Liver diseases and other conditions can give you that as well. So seeing that doesn't necessarily mean that you have G6PD deficiency. Is that okay? But that's one of the things that you will notice. Then as the anemia develops, you start having symptoms of anemia, which include feeling very easily tired. You walk a short distance and you are tired. You feel dizzy, or you feel your heart beating very fast, palpitations, a little exertion. All those can be signs that anemia is happening there because of the breakdown of the red blood cells. And so when you see symptoms like that, you can seek help and help will come to you. So that's in terms of symptoms and how we can know that it's happening. I didn't talk too much about the cause of it. I just said it was genetic because there are abnormalities or mutations in the genes. But maybe a little bit detail about that. We have the chromosomes, which some of you in biology will know about. And then you know about the sex chromosomes where you have the X and Y. The females have XX and the males have what? XY. Very good. You know your biology. So the gene that causes this deficiency is an X-linked gene. So it happens on the X chromosome. And you know women have 2 of the X's, men have 1, and then the men have a Y. So usually you find that men have G6PD more than women because it's what we call a double recessive inheritance type of gene, which means that if you are XX female, you need to have 2 of the genes that are affected for you to have the disease. Is that okay? But for a man, once you have 1, you can easily have the disease. So that's some of the genetic things about that you should know. So you find that a man, for example, who has G6PD deficiency, it means it's on his X chromosome, right? He will not be able to pass it on to his son because boys get a Y from their dad. But girls get X from daddy and X from mommy. So men are able to pass it on to their daughters, but not to their sons. And then for a lady to have it usually will mean that she gets an affected mutant gene from the mother and from the father as well. Is that okay? So you find that because it needs that too, it's not that common in women. But men, because just that one can cause it, it's more common generally. Treatment. Well, there's no cure for it. There's no medicine that we can give you to then give you the enzyme so that now you are okay. So once you have the deficiency, it is usually for life. But then we can treat the effects of it. So when you have the anemia, usually we'll have to find what triggered it and you will stop that. If it's a medication that you took, we'll let you stop that. We'll give you an alternative one that is safe. If it's an infection, we treat the infection. So find out what triggered it, you take care of that. And then we now treat the anemia. And there are drugs that we have to treat anemia, usually iron. If it's really severe, maybe blood transfusion. But for those who have a chronic kind of anemia from G6PD, for some people it's so bad that little things trigger it for them, so they constantly appear to be having hemolysis. For people like that, we may put you on something like folic acid, which helps the red blood cells grow quickly and multiply quickly, so that at least it's catching up So the rate of production will kind of catch up with the rate of breakdown so that you don't get anemia too easily. So that's basically G6PD for you. It's a deficiency of an enzyme that leads to breakdown of red blood cells when they are stressed from infections, from certain medications, from certain foods, and the main problem is that it leads to anemia because the red cells are broken down, you don't have enough red blood cells, so you have anemia. And if anemia is severe, it can be fatal, it can be troublesome, but usually it is not. The anemia can be treated. G6PD itself cannot be treated. I said in chronic cases, we may give medications like folic acid to help maintain the levels and avert crisis. So that's G6PD in a nutshell, and I'm ready to take questions. Thank you.
Come to G6PD, is there any form of research which is currently ongoing for better treatment and then, if possible, a cure for it?
Lots of research is going on, and fortunately there's bigger and bigger understanding into genetic diseases. There's a lot of genetic engineering going on, and so I believe that in the not too distant future, some solutions may come up so we can do something about it. Maybe even prevent it in the first place. In utero, whilst the baby is still in the stomach, some things can be done so that the genes are kind of changed, they are engineered, so that defect is not there anymore. So yes, there's scope for that. It's generally thought that some of these genetic mutations have stayed for long, through thousands of years, because they prefer some kind of advantages, especially when it comes to malaria, just like sickle cell disease. If you watch the distribution across the world, you find that sickle cell disease, G6PD deficiency, they are more in Africa, Asia, parts of Mediterranean. So the theory is that people who have these diseases don't get malaria easily. And so over time, there's an advantage to have it. So that gene stays on in the population, and those who don't have it are easily killed by malaria and all that through the years. So that's why we still have it here, whilst in other parts of the world, they don't have them. So genetic things tend to persist because of that, because there's a natural kind of selection that gives them an advantage, and so they stay on. So if it's going to go away, maybe now over many, many more years, as we take malaria away as well, if the world stays for another 1 million years, for example, definitely naturally that advantage is no more needed, and so we find that the incidence goes down as well. Yeah. Donate blood. You should be able to donate blood. Someone who receives blood from a G6PD deficient person will not get G6PD from that. So that shouldn't be a problem at all.
And this is a humble plea. I'll plead with our midwives that I know the purpose for them screening for G6PD is mostly because of the compulsory malaria medicine which they give us. But what I realized is that even when I got to know my status, they didn't tell me anything that, oh, maybe you are G6PD deficient, so don't do this or don't do that whilst in your pregnancy. And even before you go to a doctor or something, this is a long time, like an education on that. They just wrote G6PD, food defect with red pen, and that was all. Until I discovered myself that there are some triggers that I need to avoid. So I'll plead with our doctors and medical personnel. When we are diagnosed, or when someone is diagnosed of a certain condition, let's educate the person. Yes, it's helping you know that I'm not supposed to take malaria, the compulsory malaria. But what about my personal life? What I do afterwards to help me keep my health intact. So I'll plead that you give us education after this. Thank you. We want to support our clinic since we are advocating for a health issue. And I know we'll be coming there to test. So this is a small way to support the university clinic.
I was so delighted when I was informed that the program in UPSA offering, I think it's public or PRO, is that it? Public Relation Department is organizing such a very essential topic. As the head of laboratories under the Honorable MP for Medina Constituency's Health Project, I was so delighted to be here, so that at the end of the day we can have a very long-lasting relationship with your department, with everything that would have to do with health. I know my senior colleague, Dr. Kujo, if I'm right. I've worked with him in several occasions from the airport to this end. I've said a lot already with respect to G6PD. The issue of this G6PD, at the same time, sickle cell is one of the most essential things that everyone must be in a very good concern or relation with, especially as youth. Now that we are trying to locate our mappings and to experience what God has provided for us in the future as married people, there is a very essential need. We know this. As a public health specialist, it is always our responsibility to ensure that everything with respect to your health, iniquities, and all support, challenges, and ways to overcome health challenges, as well as supposed to be related to the community. But unfortunately, we do not do that. I heard our dear madam saying that we do not explain to them explicitly about the outcome of their results. It is rather unfortunate, but you also bear with us that the number of people we attend to and the number of us present there will not give us enough space to do the better explanation. But that is not enough to support our inability to do the right thing. But for as long as you people are on board, right from here, we already under a project. I ran out on a project to this place where we are having a general eye screening surgery for the people of Medina. So I have to run and come here and assure you that we will be able to give you all support at any point you need our support for any of your health programs. G6PD is a very serious situation that I wouldn't allow anyone, the same as sickle cell, to be involved. Or even if you have, which is because of a genetic transfer or something which you have acquired from your parent, you should be able to know how to resolve those challenges. And I'm sure doctors have touched on a lot of things with respect to medication, food, or dieting, and how to be able to comport yourself very well in the situation where you have been diagnosed of this disease. Ladies and gentlemen, as fellow youth, I would be so glad that your particular communication and education with respect to this public health threat will not only be within your jurisdiction as students here, but it can go beyond the parameters of this place. At your church rooms, in your rooms, where you sleep, at the hostels, even in cars, can you help us with education? Whatever support, please let us know, and we'll join you with that support. Thank you very much, and I will again extend regards from my boss, Honorable Sosu, to all of you. He will love to be here, but he has some other assignments that wouldn't permit him to be here. So he would be here in our next or subsequent programs that you have. But it will be of joy that we will have the practical section where we will join you with that. Thank you very much.
At this point, we want to call our distinguished lecturer, Madam Jones, Madam Ivy Jones, to come and give us closing remarks. Yes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'm just speaking on behalf of my HOD. The closing remark actually is not for me. So we want to say that it is a very good program and you have created a very good awareness. As a person, I've never heard about G6PD. If I should see it, I'll just look at the 6 and go away. But thank you very much for this awareness. It means that apart from sickle cell killing us, there is a silent killer on the soul somewhere. As Ghanaians, we cannot do much. All that we'll do is to pray in tongues again to cast it out. But I pray that this wouldn't be just praying tongues. We should check and be aware of our health. Thank you again for a wonderful program.
Call on Miss Maura Bat-Plant to come and give us the vote of thanks. Just clap your hands as she comes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Development communicators. Development communicators. G6PD. G6PD. I know that we've all learned something from today's program. First off, we want to say a big thank you to God Almighty for making this a successful program. Also, we want to thank our honorable lecturers and all dignified members that are here. Thank you, fellow communicators, for making this program a success. A big thank you to our lecturer, Mrs. Sandra Yeboah, for making this symposium a success. God bless you for coming, and we hope to see that G6PD is spread worldwide. Amen.